If you feel exhausted, it's not because you're lazy. It's because performance splits your life. A lot of us are upholding an image instead of living in truth. Religion can train performance. Trauma can train performance. But Jesus rebuilds integrity, wholeness, where your private life and your public life match. Today, we're going to go into the basement of the building a home framework: identity and integrity. I'm going to give you a simple 7-day practice that I have utilized to help become whole again. And before we go any further, this isn't about becoming perfect. This is about becoming whole. In Building a Home Inc., the basement is identity and integrity. Identity is who you truly are, your God-given design, part of your calling, but most importantly, your name. Integrity is being one person where your inner world matches your outer life. And if that's not true, you feel it. Anxiety, shame, exhaustion, people pleasing, fear of being exposed, and this constant sense that you're behind or faking it. That's what performance does. It splits you. Guys, my name is Thomas Emmanuel Orms O'Brien. I am the CEO and co-founder of Building a Home Inc. President, actually, correction. We are an S-Corp. But the reason why I introduce us every single week is because we understand that our verbiage is very unique to us. And of course, if you are new here, I would always want to have you understand where we're coming from and our lens when we analyze or talk about these topics. I'm a former drug addict and alcoholic, a rehabilitated habitual liar, survivor of a suicide attempt in 2022. For the last 10 years, I've been working in the financial service industry. I'm also in the pursuit of a degree of psychology with a minor in neuroscience, currently in the form as an autodidact, but soon to be enrolled in a formal university. And for the last 20 years, I was groomed to be a messianic rabbi. What that means is, long story short, I've studied world religions, but with a focus on Near Eastern and Western religion centered on the Bible. And then I left it all behind. Why? Because religion kills. Relationship brings life. And that is the lens in which we pursue all of our topics. But what we have is what is known as the BHI framework. This framework is what we believe is necessary for a person to live a whole life. What does that mean? It is not a life without pain. In fact, pain is a universal experience of every single human being. But what it is a life that has nothing missing and nothing broken. That is the ancient world's idea of perfect. And it's still obtainable, still accessible, but unfortunately widely misunderstood in our modern age today. So what we believe is that life is like a house. It must be built with intention. And the architectural blueprint design of your house requires very specific things. Not only does human biology require very specific things, human psychology requires very specific things, but if you were to be a theistic individual, in which We are a company that does believe in the God of the Bible expressed as the universal force of love perfectly in the person of Jesus, regardless if you are an individual that has atheistic tendencies, and that explanation obviously would be suboptimal to you. We believe that the framework still finds a home for everyone. So when we outline it, we discuss those topics through that lens. So, like with any building, you must start from where? The ground up. And so, our foundation, the motivational driving force for every human being, should be two things: love and truth. Why is that? Because if we're talking about the optimization of the human existence, the highest form of human existence possible. Because if we were to only aim for survival, then we would not be beyond our mammalian ancestors that were living in the jungle tens of thousands of years ago. The difference between other homo class of homogeneous individuals and Homo sapiens is that we have the capacity not only for higher thinking, but I believe connection to the divine, or spirituality, as some people would call it. Regardless, though, love without truth is tolerance, but truth without love is brutality. And so, if one's propulsion system is a human being knowing, number one, they have intrinsic value, i.e., they are loved, and they are living in truth, which to be in reality, it must be what is measurable and observable in the known universe through science, and my truth, but my truth is not my opinion, because my truth cannot oppose reality. What my truth is actually what's true about me. My greatest dreams and aspirations, the worst thing or things that have ever happened to me, my deepest fears, my highest hopes, all boiling down to the most important question: what's your favorite food? But that is my truth. What is true about me? What is true about you? And when you align yourself with love and with truth, you have the capacity to become the greatest human being on the planet. It's possible for all of us. We'll get into that later as to why. But the next step would be identity and integrity. Because if love and truth is your propulsion system and you believe in a theistic universe in which we were created, then every single human being has a specific identity and design. Who you are is your greatest gift to the universe. Every single human being has a unique fingerprint. And so I believe that identity is received, and then a journey of discovery must proceed from that receival. And it can only be received from the one who created you himself. Now, why does that pair with integrity? Because integrity is, if you are on the journey of discovery for your identity, or you already know who you are, then you would, to your utmost, on a daily basis, act out who you are and be yourself every single day. That would make you integral, someone with integrity. You know who you are and you be yourself. Because being informs doing. You cannot genuinely interact with the universe unless you are coming from a position of being. Now, this is obviously a metaphysical, philosophical claim, and we can go into that on a later date, but regardless, one of the primary motivational forces of every single human being on earth is identity. Who am I? Who are you? Very important question. Which leads us to the first floor of the house, which is stewardship. That is physical health and financial health. Because if love and truth is your motivational force, you know who you are and you are being yourself every day, you would love yourself in the two most important areas in modern society. Now, this is not something that is um, new in terms of idea. Society has always assigned value in terms of what is valuable, right, in the marketplace. So financial health is a given. You know, before modern economic systems were designed, we bartered in different things. You know, livestock, rare minerals, um, tools, property, right? So these value and financial health has been a mainstay in human civilization from the beginning. And I don't believe that you can truly live out your purpose if your personal finances are out of order. And so we define financial success in three avenues. Number one, getting on a budget. Why? Because if you're not leading your money is leading you. That's John Maxwell, $50 million a year CEO, leadership guru, has written, over 20 books, and all highly successful people know what their money is doing. Now, obviously, the, the more wealth you have and the expanse of your wealth, you may have then at a certain point people who are managing your money for you. But most of the time, very successful people know what their money is doing, where it's going, how it's doing it, why it's doing it, who it's doing it with, and what it's for. Right? So, getting on a budget is step one for financial health. Step two would be to get out of debt. Why? Because then you are free. To be in debt is to be a slave. Someone else always having the capacity to inform you what you must do with your money. Now, we're not talking about being hyper successful in the business world and leveraging debt to then purchase liquid or cash producing assets, right? But that's way down the road. Most individuals on a day-to-day basis, middle class, upper middle class, even high class individuals are in debt. And debt and consumerism is a huge, huge, huge problem. And you cannot be free if someone else has the capacity to tell you what you must do with your money. Then, lastly, investing for the future. And that obviously is broken down into a few different avenues of investment. But long story short, if you're doing those three things, you're financially successful, right? When you get down to the most basic, simplest form, if you were to ask the most affluent individuals today, I guarantee you they have some form of budget. They're debt free in terms of their personal finances are not in charge of anybody else but themselves. And number three, they're investing for the future in a myriad of different ways. Now, physical health is very simple. We know in science there's so much data. It's uh, inconceivable for a person to think that physical health is not important. Obviously, it is, because if you're healthy, you have a million dreams. If you're unhealthy, you only have one, and that is to be healthy, right? And so that's resistance training. Why? Because muscle is the key to longevity. Period. End of story. There's so much cited sources on that. I could talk about it for a month and I wouldn't even scratch, a dent into the literature on why resistance training and building muscle is good for you. And then eating right. But what does eating right mean? For us, we believe that gut health is absolute paramount. If your gut is dysregulated, if your microbiome within the gut is dysregulated, Your gut brain axis is out of order. Most people don't know over 70% of the serotonin produced in your body, that's one of the happy chemicals, comes from your gut. So, gut health is super important. I'm not where I need to be. I certainly am lacking. That's probably the worst area of my life right now. I'm experiencing success in a lot of other areas. My health is of my utmost concern right now because I don't want to be that asshole talking to a camera that isn't living out what he's saying. So currently, I train 4 days a week at the gym. I am on a very specific meal plan, and I am pursuing my health to the utmost. Right, we got some muscle going on, right? But definitely not where I need to be in terms of healthy, right? Um, which brings us to the second floor, right? So the first floor is stewardship, right? Because you love and you're in the pursuit of truth and you're living in truth. You know who you are, you're being yourself every day. And so, with those things, you would want to be physically healthy, you would want to be financially healthy, and then comes purpose. And a lot of people, I think, do these things out of order, which is why we have so much existential crisis in humanity today, is because most of us aren't willing to stop, dig all the way down to the foundation, rebuild from the ground up. And as I mentioned, because I was a survivor of suicide, I've been bottom, right? Ultimate rock bottom, I don't really believe in utilizing that terminology because ultimate rock bottom would be death, right? It would be 6 feet underground. So I say that I reached the floor, and anyone who understands what that means, it's like the only next lowest place you could go would be death. That's the floor. And so a lot of the philosophy behind what I do is the reversal of that collapse, right? Because I never, even on my worst enemy, would wish that someone reached the floor as I did. When your mind constricts and the only next possible thing or viable thing for survival would be to end your own life. I never want, if I can help it, I never want anyone to get there ever again. Um, because the way out is very difficult, um, and not a lot of people make it out of that place. So you have to start from the ground up to then understand purpose, right? And so the second floor is vocations, and I make it plural for a reason because I think we have an ultimate purpose, but within that, you can have multiple things um, involving your purpose, right? The Latin root word for that is vocare, to call. So that thing that calls you. That's why knowing your identity is so important first, because being, like I said, informs doing. If you know who you are, you then have a sense of what you need to do, right? And so my identity is excavator of hearts. What does that mean? Well, it's tied to Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 5, where it says, "The heart of mankind is deep like the waters, but a wise man knows how to draw it out." And so I think my purpose in life is to be in pursuit of psychology, the understanding of the mind, the understanding of the heart and the soul, the deeper things in life, and to assist people in healing of those areas. That is why a lot of our work is focused on traumatized individuals. I myself certainly being one, but that's our super duper down niche focus. But like I said, we can find a home for anybody here, really, truly. Um, then after vocation, purpose, calling, you have the attic, which is joy. Because if all you do is work and you do not rest, rest must be a part of your rhythm. Now, I say this very, very intentionally. Rest cannot be your life. right? There is no such thing as balance. If you ask a hyper successful individual about balance, they'll laugh because it's about seasons, right? It's about moments in time. Because I believe it very important that you are ruthless and intentional and absolutely super focused on your calling, your purpose, your work to get it done. You must be willing to run through that wall, right? There must be a zealous aspect where you want to get it done. This is it. And so what that means is that your rest must be scheduled and intentional. Right? Dr. Stuart Brown, one of the greatest psychologists to ever live in my opinion. He wrote a book called Play. In it he says, "The opposite of play is not work, it's depression." And so there are neurological requirements for rest. And how would you rest? Well, we define joy in hobbies, which is the things you love doing with the people you love doing it with. Why? From 1938 to present, so that's 80 plus years of human study, 86 years. Harvard University, right? The Harvard, they have conducted what is colloquially dubbed as the happiness study. That's not its actual name. But for the last 86 years, they have been. Excuse me, I'm just checking if my mic is correct here. Okay, yeah. For the last 86 years, they've been studying human happiness. And the greatest takeaway, so for almost 100 years of human data, you know what the takeaway is from that study? Relationships. Relationships, relationships, relationships. And I think, obviously, as a theistic individual, that starts with a relationship with God, a relationship with self, and then a relationship with others. All three of those things, very, very important. And so your joy, so your hobbies, the things you love doing with the people you love doing them with, and schedule them with intention. I personally take 1 day of rest every single week to do hobbies. Obviously, if I find myself in a position where I have extra time that I do not wish to allocate to my work, that's my prerogative. May not be optimal, right? But sometimes, and probably I'm not as successful as I could be because I decide to schedule joy as opposed to work when I probably shouldn't. But regardless, joy must be intentional, it must be scheduled, and it is a neurological requirement for your health. And then on the side of the house, we have the chimney, which is responsible for release. And that is the release of people and things that do not serve your purpose. This is one of the hardest ones to do, but it is absolutely necessary. That unforgiveness, that bitterness you have inside of that individual or persons that have harmed you, even significantly harmed you in your life. I had a very, very bad, probably is not even the greatest depth of word that I could use to describe a relationship with my biological father. He was a sociopathic narcissist, very abusive man, ex-felon, and he made a lot of choices in life that affected my childhood in a very negative way. Um, and if you've been here before, I've discussed that in detail many times. But regardless, um, forgiving him, and forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. That is a modern misconception. Forgiveness means their actions no longer dictate how well you will live. When you realize that You're not forgiving them for their sake. In fact, forgiveness is actually probably one of the most selfish things that you can do. You're forgiving them for your sake. Because when you find that great pearl of value, which is peace, you will never want to give it up for anyone ever again. No one is worth your peace. Period. End of story. And bitterness and unforgiveness is like swallowing a poison pill and expecting the other person to die. Suboptimal living. That's not the highest form of living. And if one were to aim for something in life, it should be for the highest form of living. And then, of course, those relationships, people that are not like you, people who, when you try to grow and succeed, they tell you, oh, you've changed. You forgot where you came from. Some of the hardest relationships to let go of, even relationships that have spanned your entire life. Very hard to let go of. But here's the thing. Your success exposes their lack of it. And so they want you to feel uncomfortable in that friendship because your drive for optimal living is making their suboptimal living make them feel uncomfortable. A successful person will never put you down for trying to be more successful. A person who's in shape will never put you down for trying to get in shape. A person who's in the pursuit of the highest form of living will never put you down for starting your journey. The only people that will try to put you down or make you uncomfortable are the people that you make uncomfortable by trying to become the best version of yourself. Very sad. That's the reality of today. And so you must learn. And I haven't even gotten to the maximum capacity of doing this, but I've started. There's a lot of people in my life that I have quote unquote left behind. I love them dearly, but they're not going where I'm going. And that is ambition with humility. Right? I'm not better than them. They're just not going where I'm going. And people want to accuse you of being prideful, of being arrogant, of changing, which if you're not changing, you haven't evolved as a person. That's an even bigger problem. You should always be changing. So that's a whole other thing. But do yourself the favor. Let those people and those things that do not serve your purpose go. And lastly is the skylight, which is the light that illuminates every room of the house, and that is wisdom. Right? Wisdom is skill in application, right? Because knowledge is not wisdom, right? Intelligence is not wisdom. Wisdom is the correct application of knowledge. For example, most people can classify a tomato as a fruit, but only a wise person would know not to put a tomato in a fruit salad. Right? So it's the proper application of knowledge. In one word, skill. That's to be wise, to be a skillful individual, someone who knows discernment, someone who knows what to apply, when to apply it, how to apply it, why to apply it, and who to apply it with. Who, what, when, where, how, right? And why. And that's the BHI framework. And so that is the lens in which we pursue everything, is those 7 categories, which there are subcategories and subsets within each of those categories. And if you want a more in-depth breakdown of those things, we walk people through the house in our Skool community. The link is in the description always. It's for free. So come on down and spend some time. We would love to see you there. But let's get into today's video. So what performance psychology actually is. Let's define performance plain in English. So performance is image management. It's when you're focused on being seen a certain way so that you can obtain certain things, right? There's malicious sides, right? Which is to manipulate and to cause harm to other individuals for your benefit. And then there is trauma and survival application of these things, right? So if you're maliciously doing it, man. But if you're a person coming from a trauma and survival, I don't want you to beat yourself up. This is very, very common. But basically, you're focused on being seen a certain way so you could obtain three things. Number one is safety. Right? Someone who experienced trauma in their childhood was lacking safety. Number two, acceptance. Right? Connection. It's what every human being requires. We are not organisms that thrive singularly. We are organisms that thrive in connection. So acceptance. And number three, approval. There's something that happens when a human being has the approval of their peers. They just become greater. To know that you have people in your corner saying, yes, go, I believe in you. It's one of the most beautiful things, and it's such a psychological phenomena. It's so awesome. And and if you've never experienced having someone in your corner, then hopefully I myself and my wife are those people for you guys. BHI, we are that for you. But that's what image protection is for. Performance psychology is so that you receive safety, acceptance, and approval, right? And I want to say something important. Performance doesn't mean you're fake. It means you learned to survive. You're fake when you're doing it maliciously, right? So, when someone grows up in instability, whether it be divorce, chaos, addiction, spiritual pressure, right? Your nervous system learns and adapts because that's what it's supposed to do. That's its design, right? Optimal survival is the brain's primary source code, as it were, right? Your nervous system learns, be what they want, and you'll be safe. And that's the beginning of a mask where your identity starts to die. So, the neuroscience behind this, here's the science forward version, right? When your nervous system is in threat mode, it prioritizes safety over authenticity, right? 10,000 years ago, when we were living in jungles, right? Or much closer to nature than we are now, let's say. If we saw a smilodon, right, approaching us in the underbrush, our body would immediately take over and make certain assessments for what they call fight, flight, or freeze mode. When this happens, your nervous system is regulating for one of those three responses. So, its safety becomes more important than authenticity. That's why every human being on earth from in utero to 12 years old has a neurological requirement for love, security, safety. That's the only way you can obtain something what is known in psychology as secure attachment, where you live from love and truth as your foundational propulsion system, is secure attachment, right? Where you feel safe, you feel loved, and that allows you to pursue the truth and discovery of the universe. Right? When you're lacking those things, there are 5 attachment types. When you're lacking love, safety, then you adapt maladaptive coping mechanisms geared for survival, not living. Big difference. And so your brain scans constantly, right? And it asks those questions. Am I accepted? If it's a no, big problem. Am I about to be rejected? If it's a yes, big problem. Did I mess up? It's a yes, big problem. Did I say the wrong thing? Right? That hyper scanning is fear. Right? In modern days, we call it anxiety, but it's fear, right? Fear becomes the main driving force, right? Scarcity, not abundance, right? Um, Divergence versus connection worldview, very different. And so your mask becomes a tool. It becomes a tool on the tool belt for your survival. And what it does is it tells you, it says if you can manage the image that you are forced to create to survive, you can reduce the threat. But the cost, because everything in life has a cost, you lose yourself. Your identity dies. And so, why does performance create anxiety and shame? Performance creates anxiety and shame because you're always afraid of exposure, to be exposed. So, you're afraid someone will see the real you, your weakness, your doubts, your pain, your failures. And performance creates shame because shame says, if I'm truly seen, I'll be rejected. Right? So instead of being honest, you hide. And hiding makes you lonelier. And loneliness makes you more desperate. And desperation makes you perform harder. That's the cycle over and over and over and over and over again. So the mask gets praised while you die inside. And I lived that way for so long. I I would not wish that on my worst enemy, truly. And let me be clear for anyone who has theistic tendencies or is religious, which I hope you're not, because religion will kill you. But God is not impressed by your mask. He wants the real you. Always has, always will. Truth is the greatest commodity in the spiritual realms. It's the only thing. The only thing that has weight, who you actually are. So now let's talk about religion. For 27 years of my life, I was raised in religion. My father, being a Jewish man, I was immersed in Judaism. I was immersed in Messianic Judaism. My mother, being a Christian woman, I was immersed in several different denominations of Christianity, massive megachurch congregations with thousands of people to, semi-large hundreds of people to tiny congregations, 150 people or less. I've experienced a spectrum of religion, and as I state always, I was groomed to become a minister, to become a rabbi. And I left it all behind, thank God. But here's my definition: religion is men and women defining God for you. Relationship is God defining himself to you. It's experiential. When you read the entirety of Near Eastern Semitic ancient manuscripts, including the Bible, not just the Bible, but including the Bible, all Near Eastern philosophy and Semitic philosophy is about an experiential relationship with God. Because if it's a matter of evidence, it's inconclusive. There is no empirical evidence that says God exists. People experience God and then they see the world and they go, wow, that's proof he exists. But that's post-experience. And so the only difference between a theistic person and an atheistic person is an experience with God. It's the same set of evidence. And so people who are theistic, they get angry and they try to debate and prove God's existence to an atheistic individual with the science. But there is no conclusive empirical evidence that the science says God exists, because it's just the science. Now, does that mean that science and God are separable? No, incorrect. I believe them to be fully compatible. But when you look at empirical evidence, there's nothing there that says, oh, yeah, God exists. When you measure the energy output of a photon and you get a numerical value in return, that numerical value doesn't type out on paper God exists, right? So an atheistic person searching for empirical evidence is not going to find it, right? But a theistic person, a person who already believes in God, finds the evidence everywhere, right? Because I've watched atheists and theists debate my entire life, right? And atheists, they walk away and they say, wow, man, this guy is so stupid. The evidence is there that God doesn't exist. And the theist walks away saying, wow, man, this guy is so stupid. The evidence is there that God exists. The only difference between a theist and an atheist is an experience with God. And a religion cannot deliver an experience with God for you. Only God can deliver an experience with God for you. In fact, in the entirety of all ancient manuscripts, including the Bible, they never point to religion. They all point to a relationship with God. When you read the Bible cover to cover for yourself, it doesn't say in there, oh yeah, these are the Christian people, these are the Jewish people, these are the Hindu people, these are the Muslim people, these are the... No. In fact, the Bible says that we are to call ourselves sons and daughters. People say, oh, wait, but the Bible says that we're Christians. No, in Acts, the sentence is, in Antioch is when they were first called Christians. So the citizens of Antioch called the disciples of Jesus Christ Christians, Christianoi in the Greek, which means to be a follower of Christ. But no disciple of Jesus in the Bible ever called themselves a Christian. It was a title bestowed upon them by the citizenry of the area in which they were operating in context in that specific chapter with that specific verse. And so I'm not a Christian, but I believe in Jesus. And I believe in a relationship with God through Jesus and the power of the Holy Spirit, everything that the Bible dictates, but I'm not a Christian. And that statement alone will get me murdered and beheaded, but you know what? It makes me excited because that's what the Bible says. And I'm not just pulling source material from the Bible. I study all Near Eastern and Semitic ancient manuscripts. That's the problem with religion. Most Christians are so afraid to read any other book besides the Bible. And even the Bible itself says perfect love casts out all fear. So what are you afraid of? If you're living in fear, you're living in bondage. Did Jesus have any fear at all, ever? He's the model, he's the paradigm, right? But no, most people don't view Jesus as a paradigmatic, axiomatic individual. They just see him as the transaction, the credit card that they swipe, that they say these magic words, and now, yes, I can make it into heaven. But in terms of an experiential lived relationship with him throughout the entirety of your existence from A to Z, that allows you to become the most optimal, highest form, lived individual form of yourself, no, most people don't want Jesus that way. Regardless, though, religion is men and women defining God for you, on their behalf, usually in some form of manipulistic way. Relationship is God defining himself to you. If you haven't had an experiential encounter with God, then it makes sense that you don't believe in God. And I am sympathetic and empathetic towards you on that, because despite being raised in religion for 27 years of my life, until I started to experience God outside of religion, I would have never become an advocate for God, because that would make me disingenuous. Because then I only advocate for God because I read a book or I heard someone else talk about him. And it must be the right thing to do, right? Because to be moral would be to be a God believing person. Well, yes, maybe. But what's actually moral is that you talk about what you believe to be true, actually, not what you think others want to hear. Whoops. And so, performance based religious environment will train you, and it will train you to do certain things. Say the right words. Look spiritual, not be spiritual, right? Big difference. Suppress your pain, right? Hide your doubt, because doubt is a sin. Oh my God, you're asking questions. Don't ask any questions. You're gonna die if you ask questions. Confess only what's safe, not what's true. Because truth can be life changing, truth can be explosive and painful, of course. Right? And build your entire identity around appearing right. And so people learn to obey. A religious person learns to obey their religious system, not even obey God. So they don't learn love and truth, because even the Bible says God is love. So that means you would need to learn what love is. The Bible defines it in many different ways. 1 Corinthians 13 perhaps being the most prolific explanation. But love and truth would be your pursuit of knowledge, not to further your religious standing and theology. And so the fruit is not wholeness, right? Because the Bible describes that fruit, right, which is a very Near Eastern Semitic analogy and picture of how it's all supposed to work, which if you were to try to observe that through a Western philosophical lens, you would never possibly understand. That's a whole other topic. But it says the Bible talks about fruit, and fruit is produced from a life. Your life produces fruit. How you live produces fruit, right? And so the fruit of a religious person is not wholeness. The fruit is fear, shame, hiding, judgment, and burnout every single time, right? And that's why we say religion must die. Religion must die because it kills relationship. It's the antithesis of relationship, right? Everyone loves to quote John 3:16, but they don't really know what it means, right? If you're looking at a connection worldview, if you're looking through a relationship lens, God so loved the world that he sent a theologian. No, he didn't send a theologian. He sent a son. So already the frame of the verse is, yeah, God's solution to this whole fallen man business, a relationship, not systems, not we believe this part of the Bible, but not that part of the Bible. Over 45,000 denominations of Christianity today. From just a logical standpoint, wouldn't you look at that and say, wow, oh my gosh, we have a problem? Because if there's one God, one Jesus, one Holy Spirit, and one script that he gave us known as the Bible, right? If you were to be a theistic individual that seeks to use the Bible as their guiding force for life in terms of text to study, how did we possibly come to 45,000 plus different conclusions? And then we say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I can't possibly agree with everything that you're saying. I can only agree with parts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the parts that I disagree with you with, throw them out the window, and I'm going to go create my own thing. Whoops. I mean, and it's in every religion. In Judaism, there is 8 major sects of Judaism. In Islam, right, there are several different forms of Muslim interpretation. right? No one can agree on anything, right? I mean, that's just human nature, right? I mean, I say I like blue, you say you like red. I say tomato, you say tomato, right? So religion must die. And the reason why is because relationship is what produces life. If you want to look at the science of relationship, whenever there's positive relationship, when love and truth is a foundational principle, humanity thrives. When one of those two things is missing or one is used to replace the other, humanity dies. Period. End of story. And so, how trauma trains performance. It's not only religion, right? Religion can be a form of traumatic experiences for lots of people, right? But trauma trains performance too, is the primary, right? And religion, it's a lot of trauma in religion. But in a traumatic environment, you learn to read the room, right? To keep the peace, that you don't need anything, that you don't upset anyone. You need to be constantly useful. You need to constantly be good. You need to be invisible when necessary. That becomes what we call in modern day and age people pleasing. So whether it's church pressure or family chaos, the outcome is the same. Split self. You become two people: who you are and who you present. And so now here's the part that matters, right? Jesus models integrity without image management, right? He is truth without cruelty. He is love without enabling. Look at his pattern, how he lived his life. He constantly moved towards broken people. In fact, he told everyone in several of the gospels, he says, I'm not here for the people who are doing well. I'm here for the people who are sick, for the ne'er-do-wells, for the ones that society casts aside, for the black sheep, for the ones that no one thinks could possibly succeed, for the ones that are rebellious against the system, for the ones who are completely and wholly misunderstood, the ones that you won't sit at a dinner table with. I'll break bread with those people. Because you don't need me, apparently. But guess what? They do. Not only do they need me, they wanted him. This whole thing about where if you're like Jesus, people will hate your guts. Oh my gosh, what a misreading of the text. What else did he do? He told the truth clearly, right? He doesn't humiliate people. You know who he humiliated? Religion. The religious leaders of his day. He was constantly and utterly destroying their lines of logic, because religion does need to be destroyed. But the actual person, the person in which you would have a relationship with, never humiliated them. He confronted hypocrisy like no other. He refuses performance. He lives from the Father's approval, right, as he would describe it, not man's applause. That's integrity. And so integrity is not perfection, right? Integrity is congruence. It's being the same person in public and in private. And this is why integrity heals. Because when you stop lying, you stop fighting yourself. And so conviction versus condemnation. This is huge, and this is absolutely necessary to discuss, especially in the body today. And this section will change your life if you let it. I promise you. There is a big difference between conviction and condemnation. Condemnation is vague, it's crushing, and it's hopeless. And it sounds like this: you're a failure. You'll never change. You're disgusting. God is done with you. And so condemnation pushes you into hiding, which is an intelligent response, by the way. It's a survival response. When a person feels shame, the brain says, nope, I can't be here right now. I gotta go. That's an intelligent survival response. Later, it turns into a maladaptive coping mechanism, right? And there's several versions of that. But condemnation pushes you into hiding. And the difference, conviction is specific. Specific. It's hopeful and it's actionable. It sounds like that was a lie. Tell the truth. That was fear. Take the next step. Be courageous. Take the next step. Right? Because to be courageous isn't to be absence of fear. To be courageous is to keep going in spite of being fearful. That's true courage. Sounds like you hurt that person. Repair it to the utmost of your capacity. Sounds like you're hiding. Come into the light. And so conviction leads you out of the mask. And here's the test. If it leads to hiding, it's condemnation. If it leads to truth and repair, it's conviction. Right? And so now I'm going to give you the rebuild. Not 50 steps, not a personality change overnight. Obviously, I can't deliver or guarantee that. But a 7-day practice that begins to make you one person again. And so for the next 7 days, I would invite you, challenge you, but I would invite you to do this every day. Step 1, write one truth you've been hiding. Just write it down. Journaling has been one of the greatest momentum shifts of my entire life. I used to judge people that journaled. I'd be like, yeah, you're weak, you're stupid. A man who journals, that's effeminate. It's weird. Journaling. Wow. Little did I know. Journaling is that next unlock. That's that level up. That's that master prestige status. And so one sentence, examples, right? I'm not okay. And it's okay to write that down. Why? Because it's the truth, and it is the truth only that will set you free. Because then what happens? Clarity brings awareness. Awareness brings options. Options bring opportunity, right? You can't fix a problem if you're not aware that you have one. And so if you're able to admit, I'm not okay, then you can start looking for solutions to be okay. Right? I'm performing. I'm avoiding. I'm afraid. I'm lying to keep peace. I'm addicted. I don't trust God. Best sentence ever. Tell God, I don't trust you. Why? Because he loves to prove himself to people. He loves it. He loves to interact with people. Not in religion, though. Not our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, when inside you're dying and in pain. He doesn't want some formulaic predictive prayer. God, I don't trust you right now. I really don't. I don't think that I know you. I think that you're purposefully hurting me. I think that my life is in shambles. What do you say about that, God? Watch. Watch how he would love to have you experience something different, have a genuine interaction with him. So cool. I'm angry, or I feel numb. And so then you take one congruent action that matches that truth. right? So not a big gesture, just lay a single brick, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So the examples, right? If the truth is I'm not okay, call one safe person. Tell them, hey, I'm not okay, man. Struggling, this, that, and the other. If they're a genuine friend, if you have a genuine connection with that person in your life, watch, they'll be there for you. And if you don't think you have any of those, DM us. DMs are wide open. You can tell us. I'll do my utmost to be there for you. And my utmost means that if I can get to you, I will. Right? But DM us. They're wide open. If the truth is I'm avoiding, right? You face one number, one email, one task, one conversation, right? Just one step at a time, right? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So one step at a time. Just dip your toes in the water. Bang. See what happens. Right? Jordan Peterson says most people don't see God because they won't look low enough. that's a statement to think about for the rest of your life. Yeah, you know what? How about today you just make your bed? Wow, bring order into chaos. That's rebellious in this day and age. I mean, 2026, make your bed, bro. See what happens. Throw a rock into the pond, man. Watch that ripple. Right? That's why start small. It's not about changing your entire life today. It's about taking one small step towards the right direction. Right? And if the truth is, I'm exhausted, right? Set a boundary. You know why most people are exhausted? No boundaries, man. So set one boundary and see how your sleep turns out that night. Tell that one person no. Tell that one task no. See how you sleep then. Right? Even an internal boundary within yourself, right? When the thought comes, oh, I'm a piece of garbage. No, I'm just not where I need to be yet. I'm a work in progress. Internal dialogue, revolutions, right? Get into it, guys. High living is just becoming an upward aiming individual wherever you're at. Wherever you're at. It's exciting, right? If the truth is, I need help, book that therapy session or tell someone you're struggling. But just be honest. Whatever you do, just be honest. And step 3, I repeat that daily for 7 days. Just give yourself 1 week of hope. If nothing changes, come back to the video and tell me how I'm a hypocritical piece of garbage and I did the 7 days and nothing positive happened. I don't think anyone would be able to do that, but let me know. Right? But don't do 4 days and then come back and be like, yeah, man, I did it. No. Do the 7 days. See what happens. Why? Because integrity is built through repetition. You don't become whole in one moment, right? You become whole through practiced truth. And if you want accountability, like I said earlier, bring this into Skool. We're building together. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Okay. So just really quick, I'm going to give you some examples across the house, right? Marriage, right? There's a truth that I've had to say many times. I've been distant. So immediately, once you name a truth, you have to take congruent action. Otherwise, nothing changes. right? Because you can identify a truth, but then don't do anything about it. No, clarity brings you awareness. Awareness brings you options. Options bring opportunity. That opportunity to change is the whole point of being a person who is seeking truth, right? And so I've been distant from my wife at times in our marriage. Very true. She can tell you. So, what's the action that I take? Hey, babe, can we talk tonight? I want to repair. Hey, babe, let's get together. Let's do something. Amore mio, dispiace. Let's go get something to eat. Let's go out. Let's go to the park. Let's take a walk. Bridge that gap. Bridge that gap. Close that distance. Have that talk. Right? And I mean, if you're at that point in a relationship where the talk is impossible anymore, then seek professional help. Right? And I understand it's a spectrum and it's varying degrees of difficulty. I understand that. Right? But once you understand what a truth is, the action you take is to do your utmost to align yourself with reality. Right? That's why love is synonymous with truth. Because if the truth is I've been distant from my wife, then the love in that, in action, right? Because love being a verb, right? Not a feeling, right? Is that I would do something to repair the divide, right? And that doesn't just apply to relationships, that could be anything. If it's work, I've been exaggerating, right? Then the action would be to just deliver one clean, honest result. If you're not as good as you think you are, great. Because guess what? That means you can become greater than you presently are. Right? If it's faith, right? If the truth is I've been performing, right? Then the action is one honest prayer, right? Just, God, reveal yourself to me. Please. This religious stuff, I can't do it anymore. That next prayer, that next service, that next small group, that next Bible study, I'm dying inside, man. You know, and the crazy part is I know so many people that not only lived my current experience, but that are currently living it. You know, I get calls. I get called when I was being groomed to be a rabbi for the last 20 years. I was in service as an assistant to the leader of a congregation. I would get calls of people, man. They would show up to service, the most exuberant, bright, joyful person, going through all the motions. And then during the week, I would get a phone call and they would say, "Oh man, you know, I want to die. My life is horrible. I don't know what's going on. I feel like God has abandoned me, left me." Daga, 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 daga. And that's everywhere. It's tough. If it's money, and the truth is, I'm avoiding my finances, I'm avoiding my numbers. You know, if you don't know where every dollar is going and how every dollar is going, you've been avoiding your finances. Then the action is take 15 minutes out your day, write a budget. Right, my wife and I, we write a budget every single week. Right, okay. My wife, so cute. Thomas and Vanessa budget book. Right, now I have a software program that we also use to help track finances. Right, but there's something about writing it down. Right, which is the science of penmanship, the science of writing. Why writing is so important, because it's a physical sensation that sends signals to your brain. It helps you remember. It's a whole lot of stuff, right? But this is how you become one person, just one person, yourself. So I want to end with this. Performance is exhausting because it's a war against being known. Integrity is peace because it's permission to be real. Even if the real is like vile and disgusting in your eyes, you're already on the journey to becoming a better person by just admitting the truth of who you are, whatever it is. And religion trains performance. Relationship produces wholeness. So here's my question: what's your next step? Comment it in one sentence. And if you want structure and accountability while you rebuild, like I said, join us in Skool. Also, resources are in the description if you're in a dark place right now. I am not a therapist. I will always lead someone to a professional if I feel like they're outside of my scope to help. Um, there are people trained to talk you off the ledge. I myself have in the past, but I am not a professional. Like I said, I'm open to DMs. I will discuss with you. I will talk with you. I will love you to the utmost of my capacity. But there are other resources in the description if you're there where I have been. Okay? This is Thomas Emmanuel O'Brien. I love you guys.